Welcome to Tech Nerds But Not Really, a podcast with a couple of friends sharing their experiences in consulting, barbecue, and life. We are Matt Rothman, Jake Arts, and Joshua Karish. And I'd like to hand you over to Jake to discuss what we're going to intro what we're going to be talking about tonight.
Awesome, thanks, Josh. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us on our show today. Today's topic of conversation, we're going to talk about the concepts and the methodologies related to crawl, walk, run. We hear that a lot in business. We hear that a lot in consulting. But really, what does that mean, and how is that applied to our lives? And I'm going to let Matt dive in a little bit deeper. Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Jake, and good to see you again, Josh. And it's kind of funny how, this is our tech podcast or tech nerds, but not really sort of thing. And we're talking about crawl, walk, run, which we've all heard in the tech space, and some other similar phrases, seed and grow, land and expand. But crawl, walk, run really is affecting me right now because I have an 8-month-old son who just learned how to crawl. And the funny part about this is he first started crawling backwards. All right. So he's crawling, but he's crawling backwards. All right. And when is he going to crawl forwards? When is he going to crawl forwards? Recently, I'd say in the last week or so, he started crawling forwards. But here's the scary part, guys. He just started crawling forwards. Now my son is standing himself up. He's not running yet. He's not walking, but he's standing himself up. So, it kind of makes me think of like he's not spending enough time in that crawl phase right now. But when I think of crawl, walk, run in the software world, we hear it whether it's from SaaS sales executives or whatever it is, where they are working with a customer and this customer now might not be ready to implement a full-on enterprise-level solution all at once across their entire business. So they pick a specific use case, take lead management, for example, and say, hey, let's have you crawl with this new software for just your lead management requirement. Let's get that stood up. Let's get it implemented. Let's get you trained. And there you're crawling with that. And then we kind of move our way to much more larger requirements spread across different businesses. So crawl, walk, run is hitting me literally with my son who's crawling and just starting to stand up. But then, we have our technology use cases too. And Josh, why don't you kind of take it from here and talk about crawl, walk, run and processes across your business?
Of course, but first, congratulations and condolences. I hear once they can stand, it's bad, but once they can stand and walk, it's way worse.
It's worse, but I'll tell you also this: it's great. It's there are upsides and downsides to every phase in child rearing.
I hear that's similar when they can learn to drive a car too. Risks, but it's pretty
We're not
good.
there yet.
We're not there yet. All right. All right. Well, Matt, you talked about how your boy started crawling backwards, right? And most companies when they engage a consultancy like Dynamic Specialties Group, their goal is to get forward, get to their end goal as fast as they can. And it's counterintuitive when we come in and say, well, we're going to have to crawl, and sometimes it's backwards because the there's a reason why they're not getting where they need to be. And so we've got to dive into that. And a lot of times that comes down to, as I'm sure you've heard me say before, process discovery, documentation, understanding where they are at the moment before we can move forward into automating or even updating the processes and then automating them. And so there's a sense of actually crawling backwards for a little bit as we're diving down into the weeds of things that they may feel are very well known, but for a consultancy to come in and be able to interact with, we've got to understand them and be able to document them in a standardized way. And so there's a little crawl back, but once we get the process documented and we understand it and they understand it, we all agree, that forward motion to the walk run is quite rapid. And we got to look at it kind of in each phase, right? So we're looking at the process aspect before we jump in and start building software and automating things. And process starts out as a crawl, walk, run. Once you get your process down and you move into system design and implementation, that starts again. Well, we're back at that crawl space where we're going to start slow and grow into it. And really, I think it boils down to the fact that we're all human and all these systems are made up of humans. And that's just how we learn. We learn through experience. We start out, we're not so good. We get a little bit of experience, we're a little bit better. And as we gain more experience, we hit that 10 years, 10,000 hours thing, and we become masters, for lack of a better term. We're just humming along great. And because all these systems they're made up of humans, the human is reflected, I think, in this process. It's a slow, steady uptick. Trying to skip over that crawl or walk phase and go straight to run, I think that, well, I don't think, I know that almost always ends up in poor outcomes. You really always end up going back to the simple building blocks and picking it back up. Jake, would you, from your project management experience, I mean, you've got to have some similar thoughts on the topic.
I do. Before I get to the project management and the team management aspect of things, I want to make a comment on a couple of things that you said. Imagine you're a company like Walmart or like Procter and Gamble or any other Raytheon. I mean, you could list the name of large companies, right? If you're taking a technology that you want to revolutionize the way you do business, a great way to make it fail is to introduce everything all at once and change everything the way that everything is done to try and revolutionize your business. Why? Because there are people. And if it was just the machines doing the work, it's less of an issue. But there's people involved, right? What do people hate? People hate change, right? And so that's where this crawl, walk, run process really becomes critical, because it becomes almost like a change management methodology. Let's release this small piece, see how it works. We want to get to this end game, but maybe this end game isn't the right end game, and so we do little pieces at a time, and then eventually we'll get to where we want to get to, as long as we keep our goals in mind. And so when we're thinking about, as you're talking about business processes, that sort of came to my mind. But when I started thinking about project management and team management, I really the piece that I really think about is the Tuckman stage of team development, right? Anybody that's been managing projects for any amount of time is familiar with the concept of the team forming, storming, norming, and performing, right? Forming, storming, norming, performing, right? This is the concept. The team comes together. We get all the right resources together, but nobody trusts anybody. Nobody knows anybody. Everybody's a stranger. We don't know how each other work. We don't really know what everybody's supposed to do. We may have some ideas, but we don't. Nothing is solidified. So what invariably happens is that the team comes together, and there's conflicts, right? There's that water and oil sort of, this person doesn't really work well with this person, or this person's working style, he loves meetings at 8 o'clock at night, and this person's working style loves meetings at 6 in the morning, and you got to figure out how to bring that together. So that's your storming phase, right? Or your walking phase, right? The team is forming, that's your crawling phase. The team is sort of figuring everything out. Maybe we can add like a toddling phase in there, to use Matt's reference, right? To think about children. And then when we get to the norming phase, everybody starts to gel. This team starts to work together. Maybe during the process we lost some team members because they really just weren't right for the team. It's fine, it happens. And now we've gelled as a team, and now we can really deliver. And it takes time to get there, right? It's not going to be first out of the gate. It does take time to get there, but once you get to that walk phase, and things start to gel, then things start to hum on all cylinders. People know what they're supposed to do. They know how everyone else likes to work, and they can start to work together to achieve a common goal. That's when you get to that run, or that's when you get to that performing stage. Now, the last piece of the Tuckman stages of development is the terminating of the team, and that's an unfortunate aspect of projects, because projects end. So we don't really crawl, walk, run, then stop. But realistically, that's if you think about the technology life cycle, right? We do a small release, then we do a bigger release. Now we've done an enterprise-wide release, and now this software is no longer relevant for our business, and so now we move on and we start the process all over again. Matt, any thoughts?
Oh man, I like it. I like it. And here we're talking about software and this is a term that we hear a lot about in the SaaS software world, and that's where the three of us come from. But this is also applicable to the world of sports, right? My wife works in high school athletics. I know Jake and I are big Washington Commanders fans, and think about it this way, right? So NFL football season. It's training camp starts in the summer, right? That's the crawl phase, right? They have training camp. They're all getting together, learning the playbook, meeting all their teammates, going through early round practices. And then when you look at the walk phase preseason, right? They have these practice games, these preseason games. Us as fans, Jake and I are like, oh, we're not going to that game. It's a preseason game. I'm not watching the preseason game. Like, who cares? But it's a dry run for the football team in a way, right? It is they crawl as during training camp. They're walking during these preseason games. And then all of a sudden, week one, the season starts, they're running. And that's a kind of a crawl, walk, run for, professional football. And look, we're just fans. We just kind of see it from a fan's perspective. But, with anything, when I, was training in Olympic style weightlifting, right? Like you have a couple things that you start off with that you're crawling with, some basic movements, some basic things. Then, all of a sudden you're kind of putting the list together. You're doing more intense training sessions. You're kind of walking. And then all of a sudden I did a competition, which was running. So, whether it's sports, whether it's software, you really kind of have phases of development, phases of learning, phases of preparing yourself to play in a sport, to implement software, to do anything, right? And to take this all the way back to kind of the ideas like, look, we all work in the Salesforce ecosystem, right? Salesforce is trying to sell software. So, when they're meeting with their customers, they're meeting with their prospects, hey, like just seed and grow or just land and expand. Like, let's get one use case in your environment, get the software for a pilot for one specific business unit. That's the crawl. Let's get that going so that we can walk and run, i.e., Salesforce can sell you more software down the road. But I hate to simplify it just into that because this crawl, walk, run can kind of spread across into different topics and things like that. But hey, this is the business we're in. So kind of relating it and taking it back to that as well. Um, I don't know, Josh, if you've seen that while you're either co-selling with a Salesforce or a HubSpot, like kind of taking it back to, hey, there's a software that the software vendors trying to sell to a prospect, and they bring you in as the partner to kind of help them with this crawl phase.
Yeah, we see it often because a lot of our clients come to us mid-sales process, right? And they are sometimes talking to two or three vendors. It's not just Salesforce. They may be talking to Salesforce, HubSpot, and Zoho, trying to figure out what the right platform is for them. And to rely on the account executive can, you get the account executive's advice. And so they're looking for a third-party opinion to help remove some of the bias and give them some realistic thoughts or experience at the very least. And so we really try to bring that unbiased opinion to the table, because for the account executives, they're motivated to sell. They sell properly. They try to keep the client's needs in mind. But at the end of the day, they're motivated by commissions, and so they can they're encouraged to continue to sell. And where we might be a little bit more reserved and think, well, yeah, sure, you may need that next year, but you don't need it this year. And so why don't we start with the lower option, the a la carte method, pick out just one thing, get that working well, just like you were saying, Matt, right? Like get something successful in the environment, help the people move from Excel to the new software platform or from the old software platform to the new one, and then continue down the path. But so many times we see a lot of clients come to us that have maybe some excess licenses that just aren't necessary right out the gate. They may have been easier to buy in bulk. You may have gotten a little bit of a better discount over the lifetime by buying them all up front, but reality states that you're not going to use them for 6 months to a year, and perhaps it might have been better to pick up on the next licensing cycle. And all those little things can add to frustration, right? Clients like, well, I got these licenses I'd really like to use. Let's do it all right now. But all right now tends to end up in a pretty failed situation. So yeah, we work to help the client right size their initial phase so that the follow-on phases are more successful. If we try to stuff too much up front, it just breaks.
So let me, and I'm going to ask a question but with the answer already in mind. What happens when you come out of the gate with a run? What's going to happen? If
You're
your
going to fall flat
son,
on your face.
your son, you're right. So
So
think about your son, Matt. Right? If your son, was born and then you tried to make him to run, he'd fall on his face, he'd hurt himself, and it would be a disaster. What's the result of that? He's not going to want to walk, right? Now, but what happened the first time that he crawled? We do this, right? Like, we encourage him. So, we take that into a business context for a second, or a technology context for a second. If you try to come out of the gate with a big bang and you try to run straight out of the gate, you're going to fall flat on your face, and your team is going to be disheartened and disappointed. When we start with the crawl, when we start with a small incremental win, what happens? We get a win, and we celebrate those wins, and that's encouragement, and that's something that's really, really important to consider, because celebrating those wins, you increase your adoption. People like to jump on board a train that's successful. It increases momentum. It's an amazing tool to have just these little wins that will help you in the long run be more successful, so that when you are ready to run, everybody's on board, and everybody is humming on all cylinders and moving in the right direction.
think of just too much, too fast, really, whether it's my son trying to walk or whether it's a large software implementation. If you too much, too fast, it's going to fail. It's going to blow up. My son's going to be crying on the ground and he's not going to want to, walk again. So,
And when he's crying on the ground, how's your wife going to like
oh, man,
that? Not good, right?
not
But
good at all.
the speed with which he progressed by doing the crawl, walk, run approach is so much faster. It sounds counterintuitive, right? We're adding what we think to be extra steps, but really it gets us where we're going faster. And as usual, we want to pop in and ask how AI is going to impact this. And so, when before the episode we were chatting about it, we went out and took a gander. Go ahead, Jake. Go ahead.
Before we go over to our AI friends, I want to say one more thing. My father was a professor for 30 some odd years in technology at the university level, and they say those who can do, those who can't teach. But that aside, he did impart some wisdom to me many years ago, and when we see technology implementations that try and go out with a big bang, like a big run approach right out the gate, they fail. And so then what happens is that the company starts over again, and then they try the crawl, walk, run approach, because they thought they knew better than to follow that slow release approach. The phrase that he taught me that I think is an excellent phrase that really applies here is that companies never have the time, money, or resources to do software implementation right, but they always seem to manage to find the time, money, and resources to do it twice. So if you can avoid doing it wrong the first time, and you take those small incremental approaches, you won't have to do it twice. And in the long run, year over year, the time is shorter to get to what you want to get to, because you don't have to restart and then pick up bad emotional debt as part of the process.
Oh, Jake, you're hitting kind of close to home on that one. My my marketing efforts, I didn't do it right the first three times, and I just poured money down the drain. And right now we're doing it right the third time or fourth time, and it's well worth it. It's well worth doing it right, documenting, understanding what it is that I'm working on. The first three times, I just tried to hire somebody and hand it off, and but I wasn't willing to fund them to be able to do the full discovery and understand our processes, right? Because I didn't understand the value of that at the time. And of course, those three first efforts really didn't render us any excellent results, right? We got some good assets, we've got some materials, but overall, it's not an operating, functioning marketing machine. And when we finally realized that, hey, we can't cut corners, we've got to follow our own advice that we use for software implementation and take that to our marketing approach, we are now seeing traction. We're actually understanding what we're doing and we're building tools that meet the need rather than superfluous ideas that are untested and unvetted. So you're spot on. I found I couldn't afford to do it right the first time, but boy, I figured out how to do it the second, third, and fourth time, and probably probably would have been benefited just to do it right the first time and not fuss around. So,
Fair enough.
anyways, thank you for sharing that. That's a good point.
Sure. Let's see what our friends on AI have to say, Josh.
Well, so the reason I was going, I was headed there off of the speed thing is because that seems to be the consensus. We asked AI how is AI affecting the crawl, walk, run process, and it really came down to iterative speed. It is so much faster to get to what it is that you're trying to achieve. Say in the crawl phase, we can rapidly prototype our ideas and test them and vet them prior to actually putting a lot of effort in. As I was saying before, I can vet out, or I can at least kill a bad business idea in 15 minutes rather than spending 3 or 4 weeks researching it to find out it's bad these days. And I think we're going to continue to see that with AI involved in the process.
Yeah, I
Matt.
mean, sorry, Matt. I didn't
No,
want
no,
to.
go ahead.
Okay. One of the things that we keep talking about at Salesforce, and I'm going to probably mention at every one of these podcast episodes, Agent Force. But one of the things that we keep talking about in Salesforce, when we're talking about Agent Force, is the find a single use case, leverage that single use case, and then build from there. The great thing about Agent Force and other AI tools as well is that they make the crawl and the walk phase faster, but they're still important to do. So even though you're able to go a little bit faster with AI tools in place in these crawl, walk, run in this sort of scenario, you still have to go through those steps in order to get to the end result that you're looking for. But AI just makes it faster and I guess helps take away some of the pain as part of the process. So as opposed to a couple of months, maybe it's a couple of weeks or whatever that timeline is, depending on your use case.
Oh, the AI and how we leverage it, speeding up, increasing the momentum, right? Like you still have this crawl, walk, run to be successful, right? You still have to start crawling and so on, right? But leveraging AI can speed up that crawl phase, speed up that walk or run phase. And look, my son is just, you know, he's not leveraging AI and his crawl phase is going a little faster than what we had in our project plan. But hey, that's how things goes. But, and AI is such a big conversation piece right now, such a big talking point, Agent Force, Chat GPT, whatever it is. The crawl phase, when we're thinking of software development, it still requires planning. It still requires solution design, discovery, all of those things. And we can definitely leverage AI to speed that up, whether it's crawling, walking, or running.
I like one thing it has in here, and I don't want to read the whole response because, who wants to listen to somebody read? But it does highlight the strategic shift from linear to loop. And I thought this was a pretty good observation. Quote for quote, AI transforms crawl, walk, run from a linear maturity model into a circular feedback loop where insights from the run phase re-enter the crawl phase for continuous reinvention. This is particularly evident in CRM systems, DevOps, and QA, sales and marketing. My chat may be a little bit biased here, but I do like the idea of that it becomes loop, it becomes agile, right? We're able to iterate at a more rapid speed, and I think that's why it's so I don't know, maybe that's why it's so valuable to IT. I think really it's a documentation of a naturally occurring process that humans fall into easily. And by formalizing it, we make sure that everybody's on the same page. And yeah, I think it's just natural. I think agile is more natural than waterfall, though I don't know, maybe there's more waterfalls in nature, so maybe I'm wrong there.
It's funny, Josh, because when you and I think asked the same question of Chat GPT to sort of come up with these conversation topics. Yours took you down the path of CRM, sales, and operations. Mine went directly to is there a value in starting small, like a local community barbecue event, before trying to compete at the national championship in Memphis in May? Clearly there's something that the machines know about us, from our search histories and our activities and things like that, that they may at this point know us better than we know ourselves.
Mayhaps. Matt, did you put
When are
it
we
in
going to
yours by any chance?
Memphis, Jake? When are we going to Memphis for the barbecue championships?
Well, we just missed the 2025 competition. That was last weekend. Heath Riles won the grand championship, and happened to be Heath Riles' distributor. So yay! But I'm down to go next year. I'd love to go. I went a couple years ago. It was a ton of fun. I didn't know nearly as many people on the scene then as I do now. So I think this time it would be a completely different ballgame.
All right,
Okay.
2026, we're going to Memphis barbecue.
Memphis in May. That's the name of the
Memphis in
competition.
May.
Memphis in May.
Memphis in May. Roger that. All right, we'll do our episode from there. Memphis in May.
Nice. I love it. I love it.
That
Cool.
sounds great. Well, I think that's a clear opening for our sponsors, our sponsor
Segue,
jingle.
yes.
Yeah, our segue to the sponsor.
So yeah, so this week's episode. Sorry, you put me on. You caught me off guard there for a second, as like my phone is blowing up. Our sponsor, the K Town Pit Q. I am so excited. We are taking off like gangbusters. I've got people coming to me now asking, "Can you teach us a class on how to make competition ribs?" The answer, of course, is yes. I've got folks that are coming to me saying, we need to do an end of the year lunch for the teachers to celebrate all the hard work that the teachers are doing. Can you cater that for us? The answer is yes. And so now I've got all of these requests coming to us, but we are excited to be bringing competition style barbecue to the DC, Maryland, Virginia community. KTownPitQ.com will be out in Leesburg on May 31st, competing at our first solo competition. We've been competing with other teams. Now we're going at it on our own. I'm really excited for that. And then I just signed up for another competition in July and two in October on the same weekend. I might be losing my mind. But super excited, lots of great things. KTownPitQ.com. Come check us out if you're interested in learning how to make your barbecue in your backyard. And as we say, no smoker, no problem. We can show you how to do it with just your grill.
Well, that was smooth. I like that last piece. That was good. Good tagline, Jake.
Always leave this podcast hungry for barbecue.
There
So
you go. There you go.
And the 31st in Leesburg, you said?
31st, Leesburg, Virginia. And if I was a better pitchman, I'd remember the name of the competition.
That's all
Um,
right. Leesburg's not that big. I'm sure I'll find you.
there you go. I'll send you the info. Nice, nice.
Excellent. Well, Matt, you got any last holdbacks you want to share?
guys, it's funny how these so-called technology topics can kind of circle back to your real everyday life. And, we are tech folks. We're tech nerds, but not really. And I just love how this crawl, walk, run, you know, saying or analogy or however you want to do it that we hear in our day-to-day tech lives comes full circle. And literally this was today where we're looking at the daycare app, and they have a picture of our son like standing up when he's only been crawling for like a week or two. So everything comes full circle, whether it's technology, whether it's your real at home life. um, Everything mirrors each other, whether it's your job, whether it's your home, your family, everything's interconnected. And I'm just very excited to continue talking with you guys and what our next topic will be and this and that, really kind of taking that from tech nerds, but not really, and applying it to our everyday lives.
Excellent.
I don't think we could end on a better note than that, Matt. Well stated, for sure.
Well said. Well said. Thanks for your time, gentlemen. We'll see you next time.
Take care.
Be well.